And she's like, what happened? Oh, I got in a fight with someone. About what? Oh, his wife. Why? What did you do? Nothing that she didn't ask me to do. And I'm just like, oh yeah, fuck yes, gentlemen, start your fucking engines.
Win those races, you were equally responsible for getting me back in the car.
The showdown between you and Niki is all anyone wants to see.
On this show, we're discussing the 1970s rivalry between Formula One drivers James Hunt and Niki Lauda. Because we're talking movies, we're talking Rush. Starring Chris Hemsworth, Daniel Bruhl, and Olivia Wilde. Written by Peter Morgan and directed by Ron Howard. Men love women, but even more than that, men love cars.
Sex, the breakfast of champions.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of How'd You Like That Movie? Tonight, we're talking about the Ron Howard racing film, Rush, from 2013. So, Scott, take us away.
I'm gonna take a step back on this one, Chris. I'm like, because this movie is only 8 years old and is apparently one of your favorite movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I need to know what puts this film apart from, the film that you jizz over every night. The one about the Navy pilot.
Yes.
And one of Charlie Sheen's best performance. So, Chris, what made this movie
better than Hot Shots?
Better than Hot Shots, man.
So, I mean, since you're going to lead in that way, that's I actually have a quote to step off right away on that. And I know you're going to make fun of me because it's from Nell Minow from Movie Mom. I don't know, man. She's still considered a top critic on Rotten Tomatoes. But what she says is, the British Hunt is Maverick to the Austrian Lauda's Iceman, the Michael to his Sonny, the id to Lauda's super ego. And I'm like, 100%, this is like Top Gun, but with Formula One cars, except this is real. Well, Top Gun's kind of real in my imagination, but like, so why is this film like, why do you want like...
This is Days of Thunder, except, based on real life.
Except that it's not.
It's two drivers that hated each other, and then at the end, they kind of like each other.
And Days of Thunder is basically also Top Gun, except with NASCAR, right? So it's like a triangle. So you want like a quick rundown of like why this is one of my favorite movies, or it's like in my top, like rewatchable.
Yeah, like just because it's so recent. So just because this film is recent, like 8 years old, for this month being our second anniversary.
You do know that they make like good quality films that are recent, right?
They do, but
like it doesn't have to be
one
from
of your
1930.
favorites. Yeah, no, I 100% understand, but to be, because you're the cinephile and like in a dirty way too. So that's what would make me think that all of a sudden we would be like, Bye Bye Baby. You're like, I want to talk about that, or let's talk about Nosferatu from 1903. So like, to me, when you brought up this film, and don't get me wrong, it is a good film, I was super surprised that it is one of your favorite movies.
So if you've been listening to this show, or if you're like Scott and have had to listen to me, you'll know that I talk about films that are that I consider like a perfectly constructed film, and it usually includes everything from like your scoring, your casting, your cinematography, your story. Like everything is just perfectly constructed. And I mean, I really like cinematography, but I also like narrative dramas, and this has all of that. Like, and we'll dig into some of these aspects, but I mean, it's beautiful to watch. It's based on a true story, which is almost like truer than fiction. Although in this film, they make them a little more adversarial than they were in real life. Like James Hunt actually had stayed with Niki Lauda when they were doing Formula 3. It's got the fucking amazing score. It also has like fantastic music supervision because it's set in the 70s. So you got like David Bowie and all this like very cool 70s era rock and roll going on. I mean, beautiful wardrobe. Like it's just it's a pleasure to watch. It's paced properly. The editing is fantastic. And again, like, well, we're going to get into each one of these things, talking about, like, you know, the director, DOP and stuff like that. So it's just a beautifully, you know, it's a beautifully created film. And that's why it's one of my favorites. Like, I don't know, those are kind of broad strokes.
Yeah, and that's all you know how to do is broad strokes, right? You just can't. You just can't hit the point sometimes.
That's right.
You know,
that's
it's
right.
a myth. It's a myth. But yes, it is beautifully crafted film. And the thing that's interesting, like in 2013, like this landed 100 for domestic.
What you're talking about, like money?
Just in all of 2013, this was for top grossing film. This landed at 100.
Oh, in the top 100. It was number 100.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, literally number 100.
Okay.
After Earth, which is, you know, that Will Smith movie that's considered a bomb.
Yep.
Made more money than this movie.
Okay. Are we having the conversation about, like, if a movie doesn't make a bazillion fucking dollars, it's not good? Like, is that we're going through that shit again, or what?
No, it's not that. I'm actually going to circle around to this. I just wanted,
because, you know, it made $100 million in the box office, roughly, right? Like 99 million. Like, that's what it made on a $38 million budget. On a $38 million. So yeah. It's not a fucking bomb by any stretch of the imagination.
No, it's not a bomb.
Okay. So keep going.
Okay. No. I want to circle back because once we get to Ron Howard himself, this is where I want to circle back to, like, this film, like where like his films land kind of in terms of grossing.
Okay.
But for yourself, like what was the thing that drew you the most and has drawn you the most to this film? Like, is it Chris Hemsworth again not wearing a fucking shirt?
Well, I mean, I hope he got that message that you sent when we did what is it, Fast Times at the El Rio or whatever.
Yeah.
When you were like
Al Royale,
that whole thing about him being like subjected to his future self having to look at that body that he had shirtless in all his movies. Like, it's unfair to him.
This film literally opens up with.
I was just gonna say that.
They're just like, we're just gonna get it over with, right?
So
here's our money shot.
That early sex scene with, like, Natalie Dormer, but just even the way he comes in and she's like, you know, what happened? Oh, I got in a fight with someone. About what? Oh, his wife. Why? What did you do? Nothing that she didn't ask me to do. And I'm just like, oh yeah, fuck yes, gentlemen, start your fucking engines. So, I mean, I knew nothing about this film. It was one of those things where I just kind of stumbled upon it. And I was just struck, like, right, like it's high octane basically right from that opening scene, right? Like, when that's how your film opens up, with, like, a sex scene in the shower and this guy basically saying, like, the closer you are to death, the more alive you feel. It's a wonderful way to live. And it's the only way to drive. And you're just like, okay, yeah, I'm in. And then, like, the way they shoot the racing too is you're right down at the, like, wheel level. When I explain this movie to people, I often talk about, like, even, like, watching it on a small screen, like, the sound and the cinematography along the wheel wells and stuff like that, you can almost taste, like, petrol and rubber in your mouth. Like, it feels like you're, like, at a Formula One race or something like that. Like, it's just, they did such an amazing job shooting the racing in this. And the fact that, like, this story is fucking awesome. Like, hold on. So, I don't know. Do you want me to just keep going, or?
No, just go for a second. But the thing that I want, because this is one of your favorite movies, like, obviously you don't watch it very often because it wasn't just one sex scene. This guy fucking marathoned.
Oh, no, I'm just talking about that. That's how your movie opens, with, like, sex scene.
It literally, yeah, but it plays into later on kind of the controversy, not the controversy, but the antagonistic nature between the two drivers. 100%. Because when Niki Lauda at the beginning wanted to date the one girl,
the track manager,
his teammate was just like, you might not want to do it because her last boyfriend was James Hunt, and he's just talking about his sexual prowess, and you're like, that's how this film made like was started with this guy going for like 3 nights in a row.
Yeah,
and
and
then not
the
knowing
line is basically like, he's a good driver, but a fabulous fuck. And you're just like, that's a dude talking about another dude as like advice to another dude, right? Like,
Yeah.
you don't want to go there because you'll never be able to like fucking sound. But so just I did some like basic research on like Lauda and on James Hunt. Fuck,
Oh, I thought
that
you were
was
gonna say
James
about
Hunt. James
I
Hunt
thought you were
was
gonna say
that.
about his stamina.
No,
Just some
but
basic
that
research
actually
about
comes
his
up.
stamina.
James Hunt, there, like I read this story about, he basically goes to bed, like, you know, picks up this girl that basically looks like Stevie Nicks, and like, you know, has sex with her all night, up drinking, you know, partying and stuff. Gets up in the morning with no sleep, gets in a fucking car and like wins a Grand Prix. Like that, the way they showed James Hunt is actually, anything you read on James Hunt, they're like, yep. And same with Niki Lauda. Like Niki Lauda was like the cool, calculating like German racer, and that's why that whole dynamic was so exciting for fans, even if it was like hyped up, like they didn't actually dislike each other as much as it shows in the film. But that it's like the polar opposites of these two drivers. You know what I mean?
No, like 100%. Like if anybody ever makes a film about our podcast, you're gonna be the James Hunt. I'm gonna be the Niki Lauda. Except I'm not going to be facially scarred. I'm still going to be the good-looking one.
And I mean, this story is such a good story, right? Like the 1976 Formula One series is when Niki Lauda gets
74?
injured. 76.
No,
76 is when he gets
it?
injured. Yeah. So he wins
Okay,
in 75, and in 76 is when he has his accident. Like, it's such an amazing story. You've got these two rivalries. It's set in the 70s. You know, Niki Lauda is considered one of the greatest Formula One drivers of all time. He's won 3, and he's the only driver to have won both with Ferrari and McLaren, who James Hunt is driving for in this movie when after he moves off from Hesketh Racing or whatever. So you've got this like perfect story. Like it's stranger than fiction kind of thing. And I really like the fact that a director like Ron Howard took it under his care, and did such a fantastic job, because you could have fucked this up so badly. Like you could have what's that movie with Sylvester Stallone, which is like a Formula One film? Isn't it called like Driver or Driven or something like that?
Drive or Driven, yeah.
Like you could have ended up with that. Instead, you get this beautiful, like artistic masterpiece.
Now, a little bit of trivia for you. Do you know who originally brought this into development?
No,
Which
I don't.
director?
Actually. No.
Paul Greengrass. Born Ultimatum, but he actually swapped movies. So he ended up taking over Captain Phillips that Ron Howard was set to direct, and Ron Howard took over this film that he was set to direct.
Didn't Captain Phillips also win like Best Picture that year?
Yep.
You
know, I'm the captain now.
I mean, and that would make sense because what's his name there? Forrest Gump is
Hanks. Yeah.
Hanks.
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks. I always forget Tom Hanks' name. I mean, and he works with Ron Howard. Actually, does he work with Ron Howard? No, he works with Spielberg all the time. So, I mean, Captain Phillips is good. I don't know. He worked
with Ron Howard.
Yes,
in Splash.
Yeah, on Splash, and on Apollo.
Mm-hmm.
So
continue. Any others?
It would have been some of his earlier work, I'm guessing.
Okay. No, I just wanted to see how much research you actually did.
Well, go ahead.
No. This is your fucking movie. You lead me.
That doesn't make me an expert on fucking Ron Howard. I mean, so Ron Howard has 2 Oscar wins and 2 Oscar nods. Obviously, you just talked about Splash. We talked about Apollo 13. I mean, I love a couple of his films. A Beautiful Mind, fucking fantastic. Frost Nixon, fucking fantastic. Cinderella Man, also amazing. He works with Chris Hemsworth in The Heart of the Sea, which was interesting. I mean, Hemsworth he was shirtless most of the movie, but mostly because he's like a sea captain who's lost at sea. So
isn't that like
Moby Dick?
Yeah, I was gonna say I haven't watched that one yet.
Yeah, but it's not bad.
Also, you know, I'm surprised because out of Ron Howard's film, Tom Hanks was in the 2 top grossing ones, which were the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons.
But you always about the money, man. Those movies were like, nah, they're fine. But I mean,
But it's still Ron Howard's top grossing movies.
sure. So what were you gonna say? You said you wanted to go circle back around to something to do with his like highest.
Yes. Now, in terms of just Ron Howard as a director,
okay,
like, I just wanted to know where he was for you in terms of like all-time list of directors. And like, I can start with my opinion, like what I think of him, and then circle back to you to what you think.
I mean, I like a certain type of director. Ron Howard, like most of the time I forget. Like I said, like I like a bunch of those movies that like Frost Nixon and Cinderella Man and stuff like that. And I always forget that Ron Howard directed them, right? Like where I always know that Steven Spielberg did Schindler's List or Jurassic Park. You know what I mean? I often forget what movies Ron Howard has directed. So I guess he's not in my top anything, but some of his films are, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like to me, he's a brand. Like going to one of his films or watching one of his films, it's really, you're gonna have something that's beautifully shot. You're gonna have something with a really amazing dramatic close-up, and it's gonna entertain you. But it's gonna entertain you at home for me. I'm like, he is not one of the directors that when his films come out, I'm like, this is must see on the big screen, like other directors are like, but and especially now, like with COVID and everything that's going on, how a lot of directors are like, my films need to be released in theaters only to be watched.
Yeah, like Christopher Nolan stuff or Villeneuve stuff, you probably want to see on a big screen.
You probably, yeah. But like to me, Ron Howard's more like, just fuck it. Like my movie's coming out. If you miss it out on theaters, you're just gonna fall in love with it in 60 days when it gets released on home video.
True.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing. But just imagine if because even how you love this film. Now just imagine watching this film in a theater.
Yes. This is one of the films that I really wish I could have seen in the theater because I never saw it in the theater. I saw it at home. And out of all the films that I listed from him, like none of them, I mean, maybe Apollo 13 if you're in the space shit, but like it was mostly a drama as well. But this movie would have fucking given you like a massive hard-on to see in the fucking theater. You know what I mean? Like way better than Ford versus Ferrari and stuff like that. Like just those fucking Formula One shots.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. And I 100% agree. Like I do regret not watching this in the theater because I just think the sound quality and everything like that would have been, it would have been like, remember, well, for all the Canadians out there, going to Paramount Canada's Wonderland and going on the Days of Thunder ride, right? Where you just sit there and you're like, right? But like the sounds make you feel like it, like you're in there. And I think this one would have been the same for myself, at least. Like I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more if I saw it in the theater. But sure. I do, and like, but I was the same way as yourself. Like I came across this film just randomly one day, and I'm like, "Fuck it, okay, I'll watch it." Right, and it didn't disappoint.
Yeah, it was like one of those like hidden gems. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. It was the Aladdin. It was the diamond in the rough.
So it's edited by Daniel P. Hanley and Mike Hill. And they, between the two of them, they have 1 Oscar win and 3 nominations. They have worked on every single Ron Howard film since
Willa?
Since Night Shift. Sorry, like all the way back to the beginning of his career. So he has the same editing team that works on all his films all the time, and they're basically so in sync with each other as editors that they don't even necessarily, like, they basically edit the same, so they can actually take a film and just like divide it up, and they'll almost make the same shot choices and stuff and same positional choices, which is pretty cool. I mean, it's interesting, like people like Scorsese also work with the same editors throughout most of their career because they kind of get into the same mindset, and so they can deliver a product like, you know, kind of consistently. I just thought that was super interesting, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and Is that going to be your choice once you make it big? Or are you just going to use the same editor all the time?
I do like the idea of doing that, because I mean, if you find there's two things, you know, your director of photography and your editor, I find like that 3-person combination, because like one setting your visuals on the day, like on set, and the other one is like you've got to try and, you know, be able to tell somebody like, I want this shot and this sequence, but you also want someone that's good enough to go, I know what you're trying to do, and I think it should be like this. You know what I mean? And I can't remember Scorsese's editor's name, the woman that works with him, but that's what she's known for, is just being like, yeah, that's wrong, we're going to do it this way, and it becomes a better movie. Like, and he'll talk about it, I think even in like Goodfellas and stuff like that, like she moved some stuff around and it made it but he was like, after, he's like, yep, it's way better than I would have done, maybe because he was high on cocaine. Actually no, that was more in the 70s or whatever. From a cinematic,
love to bring up people's faults, like, hey, you know, this guy, he had some white powder on his nose.
Oh yeah,
right?
Scorsese has a history of having like a lot of white powder under his nose. So I think it's one of the ways he was actually able to get a lot of his work done, is just like because he would take on such a big workload with his films. I mean, as I've said, like the cinematography, there's just some beautiful shots. I mean, one of my favorite scenes is right before the accident with Lauda. So he's coming out of the pits, and so the Formula One car is basically like flying off the road. You're taking it from all these different angles. You're seeing the car come over, then you're seeing in the wheel wells, and they're moving back and forth. So I mean, some of that's editing. But the camera work is, like I said, beautiful. And like I said, like a lot of that in between the tires and stuff. So how did you like it from a cinematic perspective? Because I want to talk about the
I did. I did like it in terms of the cinematics. Like for me, one of I was just getting into it, was actually, it was Lauda's honeymoon, when, you know, you see them. You see them. It's just a small little ceremony at City Hall, and just before he's getting married, he's like, I'm probably gonna fucking forget your birthday. Like, I'm just focused on driving, but there's nobody else I would want to like be with except for you. And then it's like them in Ibiza, it's just jumping into the pool, skinny dipping, and then it's the realization shot when she wakes up in the bed alone and then goes downstairs, and it's him just staring out the mirror and kind of like looking out at the world, but also seeing his own reflection as well. And he was like happiness is the enemy. He's like, once you're happy, I now have something to lose, right? And it's him overcoming that little fear, and it's just calculated in that one shot where he can see the world ahead of you, but the thing that's in front of him that's stopping him is his reflection, right? I love that shot.
Actually, in that scene as well, like right before when they do that skinny dipping, they're both naked and they're shooting like almost like underneath them on a bit of an angle, and it's this almost like dreamlike kind of like weightlessness that you see in the water, and it's just such a beautiful shot choice, and it's so well lit. You know what I mean? So the DOP is Anthony Dodd Mantle. So he's got an Oscar. He did 28 Days Later, Dogville. So he works a lot with Lars Van Trier and what's his name? Anyway, whatever. The guy that does 28 Days Later, The Last King of Scotland. He did Slumdog Millionaire. Danny Boyle. So he won the Oscar for cinematography on Slumdog Millionaire, and it was the first time the Oscar had been given to a film or cinematographer that had shot digitally. So that's that like transition between film and digital, and so he's the first one to get an Oscar on digital filmmaking, and he really leaned into the idea of like taking the camera off the tripod and stuff like that, or off of the steady cam. And like, if you think of like 28 Days Later, that like kind of like jerky moving camera in play, camera action, he's kind of one of the pioneers and like one of the cinematographers that really leaned into that. And I mean, you can see it in Rush, right? Again, those low angle shots between the tires and stuff. So yeah. Like he did a fantastic job.
I agree with you. Now, in terms of performances, like to me, Daniel Bruhl like stole this movie.
Sure.
which
100%.
which I think also is super weird that he wasn't nominated for any acting in like for the Oscars.
Yeah, but he did get a BAFTA. He got a BAFTA nod for it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it never continued. It just like hit there and then that was it, right?
Well, and just on that point, it's interesting because this film got, I don't know if it actually got any Oscar nominations. Like it got I've got, my notes say 3 BAFTA nods and 1 win for editing. But maybe I have that wrong. Maybe those were Oscar nominations, but I was pretty sure that it didn't win any Oscars.
No, I don't think it was nominated at all for Oscars themselves. That's what I'm saying. I think it ended at the BAFTAs and that was it. Like no Academy Awards whatsoever, which
is surprising
to me is, yeah, because it seems like it was one of those performances that were just like, okay, you know, like he's here kind of thing, and then it just like got, I guess.
Well, and his act, I you know, and I actually really like Chris Hemsworth's. I think he almost like got undervalued in the fact that he plays like, I've seen some footage of James Hunt and he looks like James, like it's almost like he looked so much like James Hunt that they were like, oh, it's not really acting, but it's like he's still acting like this other guy. You know what I mean? Like both of those guys made this film. Like really, this film is like just Chris Hemsworth and Daniel Bruhl. You know, I know Olivia Wilde and like Natalie Dormer's in it and some other people, but like Olivia Wilde basically is got a little cameo role playing as Susie Miller's ex-wife, right? So do you know who was supposed to be in it?
No.
So Russell Crowe, there's that, because I mean his wife, James Hunt's wife leaves him for Richard Burton, like the famous actor and stuff like that, right? And so there was supposed to actually be a scene where James Hunt confronts Richard Burton, and Russell Crowe was actually supposed to play Richard Burton. I'm like, oh, that would actually be kind of cool. It's too bad they didn't actually go through with that. You know what I mean?
Well, it could have was it just scheduling that didn't happen, or
maybe they just decide. I never found out like whether it was scheduling or if it was sort of like in conceptual phase. They were going to do that, and then it got dropped, and then it didn't even get to the set or whatever, right?
You're still waiting for Ron Howard to get back to you. Just hasn't replied to your email yet.
So like I said, this film did okay money wise. It comes in at 2 hours. It's 123 minutes long. How did you feel about pacing?
Yeah, I thought like start to finish it encapsulates you. Like the time is never a factor. You're never like, fuck, is this gonna end? You know, like this is perfect. Large popcorn, large drink. You'll finish it by the end and then go to the bathroom kind of movie.
Yeah,
like you never have to worry that you're gonna have to like piss yourself to miss something. But I think all in all, it is, I think, within the last decade, one of the better films that was released at during this time frame, right?
100%. It's unfortunate too. Like both Niki Lauda and James Hunt have now passed away. James Hunt died at 45 years old from a heart attack in like 1995. Like he was super, super young, died in his sleep. And Niki Lauda died just like a year and a half ago in 2019. So, yeah, because we're in 2021. I always forget what fucking year we're in because of COVID. Yeah, he was 70. He had some like complications and stuff. I'm sure all the trauma that he went through after his accident probably did not help. You know what I mean?
Well, he did live a full life, right? Like sure, this guy,
was on fire. He was basically on fire.
Yeah, yes. And you know, in terms of the scene in the movie where that actor or where the interviewer actually asked him the question about his face and how that's going to affect his, you know, his married life, that was actually asked of him. Like that was actually happened. But he went on, I think, from my research, like he started an aviation company, like three
aviation companies.
In which, when he retired from Formula One, he was actually one of the pilots that would fly the planes, right? Like
for the drivers?
Yeah, like
fucking awesome.
You could have been like, if you're on Lauda Air, You could have, wherever you're flying to, like Niki Lauda could have been the pilot that was flying you from wherever, Germany to
Austria or something
Austria.
like that.
Yeah, like wherever, it could have been him, which would have been amazing. I know, researching this movie too, he loved it. He said it was pretty much, he thought Daniel Bruhl portrayed him perfectly. He goes, that's how, like, that's me, that's how I am. And he goes, his one regret was that James Hunt wasn't alive to see the film, because he thought James Hunt would have got a fucking kick out of it
I'm sure.
as well.
I mean, well, imagine being like, so Chris Hemsworth's playing you, but you're almost like the cooler guy because you are real. Like the shit you did in the 70s was fucking baller. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but well, the Niki Lauda does have a cameo in this film at the end. You see him.
Well,
when he's older.
Yeah.
Okay. It's him older. But do you know that James Hunt also had a cameo in this film?
Oh, how so?
Do you know when after the character wins the Grand Prix and he's doing those commercials?
Yeah.
That's actually James Hunt's voice in the commercial with just Chris Hemsworth's face.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah,
when it's like,
they literally
Pennzoil, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. So it was actually his voice. And then they just dubbed over Hemsworth.
That's awesome. That's really cool that they did that. Yeah, man. So, and you know that like the Breakfast of Champions, that was actually like, that was fucking actually what, because they didn't have any sponsors or anything. That was actually on his racing suit. I'm like, I want that on a fucking t-shirt is what I want.
All right, there you go. Make it happen.
Yeah, I love this movie. I might even go rewatch it again tonight, and I just watched it a couple days ago. It's just so beautifully shot. It's super fun film. I recommend it to everybody. You don't have to like racing films. You don't have to like super serious dramas. It's super entertaining. It's really beautiful to watch. Yeah, that's kind of all I've got, man. And if you don't have anything else, I mean, you can always take us out of here.
Yeah, the one thing I will say, they did have one goof in this movie that I noticed. All the racing things got Niki Lauda wrong, because they put him in terms of country AUS.
Oh, okay.
Which is Australia instead of Austria.
Yeah. That's a huge fuck up, man.
And that is our rant for the day. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. If you're looking to get a hold of us, please go to our website at howdyoulikethatmovie.com. All our social media links are there, and you can email us as well. And the funny thing too with like fucking Ron Howard, like it was exactly what you were saying. Like going back and looking at his filmography, there's so many movies of his that I like, but I don't realize he's the one that directed it.
100%.
Like Parenthood, fucking Backdraft, Ransom.
Yep.
I was like, fuck, those are all good movies. But it's the same thing. Like, I don't know what it is. If it's just because he's redheaded and Hollywood's just like, fuck it, he's the redheaded stepchild. Like, we'll pay him. He'll make movies, but we're not gonna glorify him.
Production by Rod Shaver, Vader Monkey Productions.